Okay, hello. This is Art Therapy with Miss Amanda. It's time to get creative. What we're doing today is we are working with watercolor. And this is the piece we will be doing. But of course, you can tweak it to any way that you want. And I'll show you how to do that. So first, let me talk about paper. Paper. Okay, so since we're working with watercolor, you are going to need a paper that is not smooth on top, that has some tooth to it, that can absorb the color and hold it onto the paper. So printing paper will not work well. You could do it on there, but you're going to have to do very light, very light water. So you want something with some tooth. Actually, this is a poster board that I got from Family Dollar, believe it or not. It's not slick. It's not one of the slick kind. It has tooth, and I just cut it down. So this is my paper. Actually, I have one right there. I'll use that. Another thing, of course, watercolors. These are old. I've had these forever. Like it's broken, but I love these watercolors. But you can use the ones that you get from Walmart or the ones that your kids have, actually. Now, these are professional, so they have a little bit more pigment to them. These, if you use them, you may have to do double layers of whatever I'm doing to get the color consistency of these. They also have watercolors that you can get in little tubes like the acrylics, and you would just use more water with those. Another thing that I have is a plastic plate. You can use a paper plate, or you could even use a styrofoam plate, but that's going to be where I'm going to mix my colors. And of course, water, lots of water. So with watercolor, actually with acrylics, I usually use just one, but I've got two because I want to make sure that I get clean colors when I'm painting. And of course, my whole little set of paintbrushes, because we use different ones, and pencils, because we're going to draw our image. And then the end, to make our image pop, I don't know if you saw, but we inked it at the end. So I've got different kind of markers. I like black because when you're using watercolors, it's already light colors. So the black really makes the colors pop. If you don't want to use black, I suggest using a dark purple, dark blue, something like that. Okay, so first off, here's my paper. I'm going to take my pencil. And I don't like going all the way to the ends with my watercolor. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make an inch in of a border, and I'm going to do it very lightly. Even lighter than you would usually do with acrylics, because acrylics cover more opaquely than a watercolor will. So can you see that? I think you can. You can definitely see me moving. So I'm doing it an inch in. Inch in, all the way around. This will be our border. If you go a little outside the border, it actually kind of makes it look cool. So you don't have to be crisp with it if you don't want to. Okay, so there's my paper. I'm going to take a big flat brush and dip into the clear water. And first things first, we have to wet the whole surface that we are going to paint. Not saturate it, but just lightly cover our whole surface with water. Lightly. This will help when you put the paint on. It's going to help it move and blend, because we're going to do some blending in our background. The background is going to be very easy, very easy. So I'm going to go into, from my pink, I'm going to open up this little guy right here at the top. and then go into some orange on the side. But actually I'm gonna start with the side first because the orange is lighter and I want it to really get that color in there. So here we go. From my little border in, we're gonna work this down, big strokes, easy. You can have a lot of fun with this. And then on this side, from my border in, up and down, up and down, up and down. Okay. So, see how the water has diluted the color. So if I wanted a little bit more color, I would go right into the color with my brush and get it loaded with color, and I'm going to come back and press where I just want a little bit more coverage of color. Okay, I'm going to do that on this side. Another cool background color that people do is just tea. You could actually take tea and antique the back. I've seen that done. It's really nice. Okay, so here we go with the separate color, which is going to be pink. And I'm going to go right into the pink and get it nice, saturated on top. And I'm going to come and go all the way around my little border and then pull it down. Once I get it all like this, dump it in the water, more color, and now we're going to bring it down to where we're just going to let it. Ooh. If you get too much color, I don't like that. Really quick, I'm going to come back with water and pull it out. There we go. See how easy that is? Now, this, you will not be able to do it in line with me. You're probably going to want to watch this video while we're doing it live and then come back and do it because we need to let each layer dry because it is watercolor. So here's this first. By the magic of TV, I already have one done. And I'm gonna get this one, which now is completely dry. You do not want to go pencil on top of wet because the pencil will pull the paper. You can rip the paper. The image may not come out as crisp. So what we're doing is I'm going to draw now my image of what I want to paint on here. So I don't, so it kind of gives me a map of where I'm going with this. So remember light because we are doing watercolor. And I'm going to do, let me show you the image again. So I'm going to do the circle and pull out a little thing for her head and not go back in and do this detail. You'll see. Okay, so we're going to start with the circle behind her head, which is going to be the moon. And we're going to pencil that in. If you have trouble doing a circle, you can use something, a bigger cup or something to make your circle. Okay, and then about halfway down, we're going to put her face. So we're just going to do just a side face, taper up, nothing too detailed. Pull down her neck. I like a nice thin neck. And then we're going to bring her shoulder over. Bam. And right here will be her hand. So I'm just going to put 2 little lines for her hand. Pull it back down. And pull this down. That's her arm now. And come down slightly. And pull back up. We have a finger. And we'll put her little thumb. Now from there, I'm going to take this and pull it all the way down, and there'll be her gown. Bam, simple. I'm gonna come back up here, and I'm giving her a bob, but again, you can work any kind of hairstyle really into this. So for her bob, I'm going to follow this line right here, right back up. Go above her head because your hair gives you a little bump down, and then I'm going to come up and kind of like it goes behind your ear, come back down and pull that. So what I'm also going to do is now I need none of these lines, so I'm going to go ahead and erase them because I don't want them to accidentally show through when I'm painting. And I'm going to erase this around her neck because I don't want that there. And I'm going to erase the little bit of moon that's in her hand. And now I'm going to develop her fingers, just very simple. We'll do 2 out. And then like she's got the other 2 pulled up. So I'm going to go down into an almost square and come up, down into a square, and then an L shape and bring that right back up. Now I'm going to come down and curve, and there's her arm. And then come down again. We're going to give her an elbow, and then I'm going to let this balloon down, and there's her gown. Pretty simple, okay? So I need her arm to be poking out of the caftan dress that I have her in. So I'm going to pull a rounded, pull down, and then right at the edge of her arm, let that meet where it's a Y. And that's going to be, we're going to darken that. And now the collar, which I'm just going to pull down with a rounded V. Bam, we're done with our pencil work now. So when you're done with that, we are going to do the bottom half of our kind of gradient background. So the bottom half, I'm going to go in with the big brush again. We're going to wet it so it will flow into the colors. And I'm going to take a brown, a light brown, mix some brown with maybe a little tiny bit of that orange. And here's where your plate comes in, because I don't want to mix my colors in the palette that I have. I'm going to take that brown, you see it there, and wash out my brush, and then go into the orange that I had. And there it is. And I'm going to mix those together right here. And see, I see it down there. I need more brown. I want it darker than that. So if I need more brown, I can pull more brown and put it right there. Ooh, I like it. And now we're just going to go right where our caftan, where the dress is, because we want to add some depth there. So that'll be darkest, and we'll pull it down. Put that down. I'm going to hold my paper, so I don't want to go in everywhere. And we'll pull that right back up. And there we go. The same thing on the side. I need a little more. Okay. Darker, and then it pulls out and to just meet the other color. Okay, so around her hand is white here. I do not want to go in with this crazy big brush and get it all over. I don't mind if it's already there because that's going to add to it, but I don't want to intentionally do this dark. So I'm going to take a smaller brush, go back in with my, get it wet first, go back in with the same color and meet it up here. There we go. So now we're going to let that dry. And the next thing, here I have one here that's already dry. We are going to do her gown in greens and the moon background in almost the same color, maybe a little bit more orange. So I'm going to get a flat brush that is about this size. It can be a little larger, a little smaller, but you want to make sure that you can do nice long strokes with it. So I'm going to mix my color. I can actually take this color right here and put some deep green into it. So it's that brown orange, and I just put a little green in there. I want a little bit more brown. So what the brown does to this green is it tones it down. It makes it more earthy, because sometimes greens can be really jewel tones. They're still beautiful, but I want, since this is a very serene look, I want it to be toned down. All right. What I forgot to do, already mixed with this brush, so I'm not going to use it. I'm going to use another brush, is what? Wet down where I'm putting my paint. So I'm going to take this fresh brush, get it wet. I'm going to go back in and wet down where we are painting. And that is to make the paint smooth. Now, once I'm getting up here around her hands, I don't want to wet her hands. So I'm going to wait and do that with a smaller brush. Because if you wet the hands, the green will get on the hands, and we don't want that. So we're not going to wet them. We're going to go right around that, just into these easy shapes to get our green on. Yeah. Okay. All right, so that's pretty cool. Right here, I don't know if you can see this, but it got really wet here, where you can see it's going through the paper. Don't wet that anymore. If you see that, you may want to even avoid painting there, but I did it for years, so I probably will. And I'm going to come up this way and go on our edges and pull down. It looks really thin right now, but we're going to go back over it several times. Okay, so edges first, because we want to really refine the edges. And now you can play with, kind of get creative with the strokes, because when they dry, it's going to look like folds for her dress. So, yes, you can get kind of creative with that. Oops, look what I did. That's straight brown. So that's okay. We're going to go back in and pull it out and make it the color we want. Bam. Okay. And you can go from bottom to top too. I like to do both. Come down and then make some folds coming up. And so you would let this dry in between. And of course, I've got another one. So you can go back over it a little bit. Here's one. So once that basic is dried, then you can go back in again and give it a little bit more depth. Like maybe I want to pull some more dark in here and around here. And pull it down. Ooh, look at that. And then I'm going to take some water and pull it back out so it blends. That's the nice thing about watercolor. We can blend so well. And the cool thing too is even after it's dried, like I could go back and put water on it and blend it. So it's something that's always workable, which is nice. Okay, I'm gonna go back in with a very dark color really quick and put this shadow, because that's the inside of her sleeve. So what I'm gonna use for that, I don't like to use black when I'm painting in the, when I'm gonna do ink at the end, because I really want the black to be the ink where it makes everything else pop. So here's what I'm talking about right here. So I'm gonna use a blue mixture with gray. So take a little gray and put it, get it in my brush and put it over here. And then take a little dark blue, like navy blue, and we're gonna put it in there. Now, every once in a while, if this doesn't get dark enough, I will take a small bit of black just to tone it down. But I don't like to paint on it directly. Okay, yes, it needs a little black because that's really blue. So we're gonna do a little bit of black in it, but it's really still gray blue, and I just use that to tone it down. There we go. And we fill that. Okay, so I'm going to do a little bit of red at the tips of her fingers, which goes into blue. So we're going to take some red on my thin brush and take right here and get it really watery. Water it down. Okay. So I'm not going to water where I'm putting these because the fingers are really fine. So if I put water on it, it's going to make it spread. I don't want that. So when you want the fine detail, you want to get the paint watery, but you don't want to go ahead and water where you are. So I'm going to put it right here and let it come up and just kind of take a dry brush that's small and lead it, kind of just like meld it down, barely their color. The same thing with these fingers. We're going to go in hard with the very wet red. It makes it a very rosy color. And then I'm going to take my dry brush and pull it out And do you see how the paper is just drinking it up? And it makes it twice as light. So you know what? I want it darker. So what am I going to do? I'm going to go right back over it. Bam. And pull it out a bit there. Okay. Now I want to do the same thing right under her cheek area. So I'm going to just do kind of a rounded cheek. Give her a flush to her cheek, but that I'm going to take the dry brush and pull it down. So it just mellows it out. Because right now we're not doing anything too striking. We are just going for light colors. All right, I'm going to wash out my brush and I'm going to make her blue. So I'm going to go into a dark blue and I'm going to hit the hard edges first. And what I mean by that is the edges of her hair, her nose, her neck, and everything else is going to be softer. So I'm going to come back with the edge of her hair right around her face. And look at that, I barely even put water in that. Why? Because now I'm going to go back into the water with just a clean water and pull that out. So I'm going to use it and pull it out. There we go. See how it gives the definition without trying? So here we go again with the very dark, hardly any water on my brush. And I'm going to go back into this hairline and pull that down. Now put water on my brush. If you think you get too much, you can always dab onto your paper plate. It'll pull some off. And then pull it back. And I like to pull up from the bottom. And from the bottom, I'm going to give her a little bit more darker color that I can pull from. Bam. If your brush gets too wet too, you know, you can always dry it off. So I'm going to do dry it a little bit off. And then pull it back up. The top, I want it to be dark, bam, and then wet it out and pull that together. And I have little roses in her hair, so that's why I'm leaving those circles. Or actually, I think they're poppies. But of course, we can make them anything we want to. And we'll fill in that whole thing. Okay. I'm going to come back around her nose because I want that to have some definition with just the color. And her eye. Bam. Now I'm going to go back and try and follow that by pulling that out. In and around those little rosy cheeks that we already put on her. So pretty easy. Okay. I'm going to do the same thing that I did here under her chin and pull that down because I want to create an illusion of shadow here. So deep dark blue here. And now I'm going to wash out my brush, tap it onto my paper, and pull that down. Okay, I'm going to add more definition to her hair. So we're going to pull in a little bit more blue. If you wanted to make her hair a different color than her skin, you could like literally anything you want. But I like the subtlety of it. Okay. And the same with the hands. Or actually, we'll go ahead and go into her her neckline. So I want it crisp here. So I'm gonna follow this. And now I'm gonna wet my brush and pull back up where we meet with the neck. So pull it up, pull it up, pull it up. Now, if you want to leave some white spots, it actually kind of gives it interest with light, and you're not working, so you don't even have to work for it because there it is. I just didn't even paint that. So you can do that if you want. I think I'm going to do that in that case because I think just little things like that add more interest to your painting. I'm going to come back in and go around her little thumb and back up with a little bit of blue. And then, ooh, I don't like that. Too much, too much. I'm gonna wet my brush, pull that out of my brush, and while it's still wet, I can pull that away. And if it was really crazy, you can actually just go into it with your paper towel and dab it back up. Okay, and we're gonna do the same for her arm here. And the rest of her hand. Dark. I'm gonna pull that in. Blend it where we already have color. Okay, let me see if I have. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to do, actually I'm going to add her little lips on here. So I'm going to put some really diluted red, make it kind of pink, and we will go right under her nose and just add two little lines, very loose, as her mouth, which we're going to go back later with the ink and really refine what we're doing. This is pretty dry. And now what I'm going to do is go back in with my red and do her flowers, and then also do the bottom flowers. So we are going to get my pencil and just draw, not perfect circles, kind of just random flower shapes wherever you want them on the bottom. I've got my other ones already mapped out up here. Okay, so I want a very thin brush for my flowers. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to take my water, put my water here. Again, these are very little and kind of detailed, so I'm not going to wet them. With the big stuff, what if I want it watery, I'm always going to wet it before I paint it. If I want a little bit more detail, we don't wet it first, but we still use water. So here's my water, and I'm gonna wet my brush and then go into, I think I'm gonna do a red and a little bit of rose pink and mix them together. Okay, so we're gonna go back in and just fill that up. And it's okay if it gets light and dark, we like that. We like the light and dark. If that's a little heavy, see how I can take that? I'm just gonna take that and use it to fill in this one. And then we're gonna go back and do the ones in her hair. Once this dries, then we're gonna go back in with a heavier red. Okay. And if you wanted to, you could do a little bitty do. Just some little dots. Add some interest. And we're gonna do the ones here. And we're gonna see when you work on top of the colors you've already used, it adds a lot of depth to it without even trying, which is nice. I like sometimes the easy route. And it's okay if some are more rose and some are more red. Okay, so you can get it loose, but you want it, when it dries a little bit, I'm gonna come back in with a heavier coat of red. And we are going to develop, yes. Okay, so I'm letting it dry just a bit. And I'm gonna go right back in, but not use that, use water just a little bit. And mix my two colors, get it really well pigmented on my brush. And I'm gonna go back in and just bloop, bloop, bloop. Kind of like parenthesis lines inside my little flowers. All around. Or if you want to do the whole bottom red, you can. This is about easy depth, easy depth. Why would we work hard for it? Just go with it. You want to have fun with it, but don't do too many. Okay. So just a couple. Okay. Cool. Let's see one up here I didn't do. It looks like not a lot right now, but later it creates so much interest. So you don't have to go back and do the lines, but to me it adds so much. And it's pretty easy. You can't really get this wrong. Okay, I'm gonna add a couple of my little fun dots for interest down here. It's almost like she's letting these little flowers go. Poop, poop. And again, you want to have fun with it, but don't add too many. Okay, so now I'm going to go back into my brown green. I'm going to pull this out. And we're going to go back in with a bigger brush and add our design on our caftan dress. I want a brush because I don't want to do too much work. I want the brush to do more of the work for me. So we're going to do something like this, maybe smaller. But see how that's round? It's going to, all I have to do is kind of just get the paint on the brush and it's going to do the work for me, and I like that. Okay, I like this one. Okay, so I already still have some of that green, and look, I just put water right on top of it and it turned right back into paint. That's why I love these. If this was paper plate, it would of course be sunk into it and the paper plate would be its own artwork at the end. So I'm going to do some more brown and more green. And we're just going to let it flow. Another brush that I want to do, I could do something little. So I'm going to have a little brush on the side. That's for a couple different things, and I'll show you. Okay, so I'm going to kind of make elephant ears. I want it to be planty since we're working with flowers and it's green. So I'm going to take it and just pull it like into a V. Bam. Now, I already like that, but if I wanted it to blend a little bit more, you can come back up with your dry brush and just pull it. Okay, and we're just gonna have fun, randomly put them on, but also think about the folds of our fabric, her arm, where are we gonna put these, and the rhythm of our layout of our composition. So here we go. I don't think that I need to pull these up, but if you feel that you do that. And so little bit by little bit. I also put a little bit of different color. I just added a brown, a dark brown to it because I wanted different levels of color. I don't want it just these two colors. I want it like 5 colors. So as I work, I may change the color a bit. So I just put a little bit more brown in it and see how I like that. And you can do tiny ones, leaf shapes. I'm going to come back in with a smaller brush and take that green mixture and add a little yellow to it. Okay, and then we'll maybe can come back in and pull down right, left, right, left, right, left. And we got like a little vine pattern going down. Add that to a couple of different places. Back in with some V's. And this is where you can just have fun. And it's pretty calming. And there's no right or wrong because this kind of, see, as it dries, it just fades into it. And if you didn't like a certain thing, when you go back to ink it, which I'll show, you don't have to focus on that. So you can let it kind of just hang in the background. And maybe, ooh, that's pretty bright green. I kind of like that though. Okay, what I'm going to do too, well, let me add a few more of these down here. And then I'm going to add some interest to her neck. I'm going to turn this way. You know, you can always turn your paper any way that you want. And I'm going to pull out some little, maybe leaves, but a decoration around her neck. Okay, add a little cool stuff there. Let's see here. Okay. So I think I went from one, I did. Okay, let me go back to this one. Because what I did forget to do before we did the head and everything is color this moon, because this one was already done. So let me go back really quick and let's do the moon. So the moon is another one like this that we're going to want to wet first. But you want a smaller brush because we have all this interest going around it. So you want to be careful. So you would wet this part, like the big parts, get them wet. And if it gets too detailed, we're not going to wet that because we're going to pull into that. Because if we wet that, it's going to go everywhere and we don't want that. So we're going to wet our bigger parts. And then when we get close to the detail, we stop. My moon color, I went with orange and brown. Again, in the same very chill family of colors. I'm going to put a little water here. I'm going to take me some orange, get it nice and saturated all over my brush and pull it there. Wash it out, get that light brown, put a little bit of that in there. And for good measure, I'm going to add some of this orchard yellow. It's kind of like a wheat yellow. Okay, now that's a lot of pigment. I like that. Okay, so I'm going to go back up. This is wet, and I'm going to pull out around the edge of my moon. And now I'm going to get it wet and just pull this in. And the same down here and pull it up. And now I'm going to work with the water that I already have and run around these little details that I want not to be colored. And the paint should listen to you. See how that worked? Okay, the same here. This is wet down here. I'm going to pull this up. And in these little, like there's a little piece of moon here. I want that to be dark as I can get it. No, it's a little watery. Oh yes, there we go. Because it's shadow down there, so we want it shadowy. And just kind of drive around your details. If you think the paper is too wet, stop. Stop and let it dry, because it's going to be easier to stop your creative flow than to go back and try and get that out. So if it's like saturated and you're like, whoa, there's no way it's going to go everywhere, just let it chill, because that water is going to dry clear. It'll go away. But once this watercolor is there, it's really hard. I mean, you can manipulate over it, but sometimes there's no going back. So, because since we're going with watercolor and sometimes it can have a mind of its own, if you feel like you're going to crash, just stop, because we can wait and you can come back to it and not have to worry about it. Okay, so now that it's nice and wet where I want it, I need some more pigment. I can see that. So we're gonna do our color again, because I don't have enough color. And like on top of her head, ooh, look at that. I'm gonna take that, and now I like to pull, I'm gonna move my paper around. Feel free to do that. I'm gonna pull back up. And you could even, with this color, go back in and make these little circles. And then take your paper towel and dab them, and they create kind of little craters for your moon. Okay, now that we did our moon and we're back to where we were here, where we have now our moon done, we have our caftan done, we have our skin done, we have our flowers done. Now, of course, you would let it dry. Here's a dry one already. And now we're gonna go in with our pens. So all this can move over. We're done with that. You wanna let it dry after your last brush stroke for at least 20 minutes, because you wanna make sure this is dry, because if you hit a wet spot with this marker, it's over. It will spread. I mean, maybe you can work with it, but it's not gonna be crisp anymore. So I've got a felt marker. I have two just pens. I actually love, I mean, you can get a brush and use ink on a brush, but I love just using ink pens. They're magical, really. Okay, so I'm gonna go back in and add a little interest around here with some dots that go in with my red dots that I already have. Not too many. And this is getting me used to the pen on paper. So I like to start with something simple before I go in and like do her eyes. So around here, we're gonna dot it out. Okay, so now I'm gonna go in for the outline of things, which is obvious. So the first thing, let's start with this moon. We're going to go in around it with a semi. You can make it as thick as you want, but I like it kind of small. But see, look at that. Just that. We're going to go the whole moon around and start lining our picture. Start thin, because if you want it thicker, you can always make it thicker. But if you want it thinner, that's not going to happen. Okay. Be very careful also. You don't want to overlap your lines. You want it to stay crisp. And right there. Okay, so there's that. Now I'm going to go back in to my flower and do the outside of the flower first. And then do my center of the flower. And then I'm going to go back in and just where some of those lines are, do a couple of black lines in there. It adds so much pop to your work. I love it. Okay, so I would do all those. And of course her gown. And basically we're just going by what we've already done. So this is the easy part. You just want to stay vigilant of keeping your lines sharp, not overlapping your lines, not making your lines too fat at first, because like I said, if you want it bigger, you can always go back. I'm going to go in and do her face. I'm going to go and do kind of her eye. And then pull out, I want my lady to have some nice eyelashes. So we're going to pull them out. That's pull out and up, out and up, out and up, out and up. And as we know from beauty standards now, you can never have too long. Look at that, just that little pop. Okay, so then we're going to come back and add her a little bit of her nose and then a parenthesis on the side where her little bam. And then in her mouth, just a line where I already have that color. So everywhere where we've already put color is a map to where we're going to put our ink. And like you can see here, less is a lot of times more. I could go in there and get really detailed with this, but I want to let the watercolor do that. Put in the ink. The watercolor that looks like hardly anything before, they become all these things that's like, wow. The same thing with the hair. We're going to come back and do this hard line here. But then with her hair, I want to pull it up and maybe give her mini lines. Okay, so what I didn't give her, you don't have to because it's also in not to have the eyebrows, but if you want to give her eyebrows, then you're going to pull along that shadow line that we made and just tiny, tiny, tiny strokes because they're little hair, and we'll give her some eyebrows. And basically all the end will be is pulling out these lines. Now, on this one, I can see where it got a little murky here, but watch, we can just go back in and make that seem like it's almost a shadow. Just by a few lines, and then we're going to add our little fingernails and some knuckle lines. And that makes small boo-boos that you may have not even seen to begin with go away, or part of the composition, which is awesome. Okay, so we're almost out of time. I just want to go in really quick and with these leaves, very tiny, hardly any lines, and go light and add some definition to that. And let me show you the end result. Once you get it all inked, it's a beautiful piece of artwork, and I sure did have fun painting with you today. I hope you come back next week, or in 2 weeks actually. Bye-bye.